All right, guys, welcome to this episode of Vertcoin Talk. Today we are going to be talking about the 51% attack website and a list of options that we may have as a community to be able to counter that. We're also going to be talking about a upcoming Lara workshop with Gert. As you can see here, he's in our Zoom meeting that we have going on today. And then we also have Ben from the marketing team here for today's Vertcoin Talk. But Gert, if you want to introduce yourself, this is your first time being on the show. And he's one of our developers who also works at the MIT-DCI with James. So go ahead, Gert.
Yeah, so my name is Gertjaap. I'm from the Netherlands, as most of you already know. I joined the Vertcoin development team back in May 2017, so that's about a year ago. Since then, I've been working on various projects within the community. Started off with some simple things like paper wallets, like all these sorts of things that any developer can do, and found my way into developing also on the Vertcoin core and working on the lit box, working on lit itself. And from those contributions to lit, I also came in touch with people from MIT. Obviously, James works there as well, and I got to know that they were looking for a developer, and I got to talk with them. I think it was February of this year, and they ended up hiring me. So now I work most of my time for MIT. Focusing on layer 2 networks, so Lightning Network, and also the Discrete Log Contracts that you guys covered in the last Vertcoin Talk a little bit. So maybe it's nice to talk about that a little bit today, and the upcoming talk that I'm having in the end of June in Berlin. And that's about me, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for joining us on the podcast here today. So one of the things that we're going to really do a lot of deep dive into today is going to be that 51% website that we had show up really kind of this week, last week, and kind of the technical aspects of a 52% attack and how this affects the Vertcoin community and what we can do as a community in order to kind of prevent against that. So I'm going to pull up here real quick. As you guys can see here, we got a article here from Bitcoin.com where they were talking about you can now 51% attack a coin for as little as $500, and they go into the to the website crypto51.aap, which I have pulled up here. As you can see, it's a pretty simple website, and it lists out a bunch of proof of work coins that, what it costs in order to be able to attack them for an hour. And I'm not sure exactly how they're calculating the price, because I would imagine the hash price varies wildly from minute to minute. But there's a column in there called nice hashable, as in like 1%, 2%. I'm not exactly sure. Do you guys know kind of the breakdown of this site and kind of how it kind of determines these different parameters that it's displaying here on the site?
Yeah. So I believe how it works is NiceHash is more or less like a marketplace for hash rate where you can outbid other people to get access to a particular amount of hash rate in a particular algorithm. So you can order, you can put in your order saying, I want to pay this amount of Bitcoin per terahash of Lyra 2 RE. And then as soon as your bid becomes the most profitable for the NiceHash platform and the people that are using GPUs to mine them, then it will switch to your as long as you're the highest bidder, it will switch to your order, and people will start mining that algorithm. And NiceHash will make sure that the hash rate is pointed to whatever pool you chose for the hash rate to go to. So what they do on that site is they look at these markets for SHA-256 and Script and Lyra2RE, and then they say, okay, in order to get 51% of the network, so like double the hash rate plus one, basically, there's a price on the NiceHash platform for that amount of hash rate in that particular hash algorithm. And so you can calculate the price of doing that for 1 hour, because you pay for a terahash per hour or per day. So they can, sort of calculate how much that costs. And then the other column is the available hash rate. So even if you would pay, the biggest amount of dollars available, would there even be enough hash power on NiceHash to attack that network? Because there's a limited amount of hash power available. So people, also point Antminer ASICs to NiceHash or Script ASICs to NiceHash. So you can see how much you could get from NiceHash, so you don't have to do any upfront investment to do a 51% attack. If it's not 100%, then you also see that the dollar amount is sort of italic. So they sort of extrapolate based on the available hash, and they assume that all the other hash would be just as expensive, and that's how they come to the dollar amount.
So do you think this website is going to encourage people to try to 51% attack these different networks?
I hardly think that it will encourage people to do so. It will just, and that's, I think, how it's intended, is to visualize the security of some of the blockchains that we have versus the value that they have. Because, I mean, even if it's like $500 to attack a chain, if the chain itself is not worth any money, then that's not a big deal. But there are very expensive chains, like I think Bitcoin Private is even on there for a couple $100.
They're just at over 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we were under 1,000 as well, and now we're over 1,000 again. So it does fluctuate. It's not fixed price 51% attacks.
Exactly.
But I think, this has always been the case. This is not something new. The only new aspect is the fact that NiceHash now has so many people using it that it becomes sort of a botnet, really, a voluntary botnet. So people, they make their GPU join a platform that can basically point their hashing power at various chains, for good or for evil. There's not that much wrong with somebody having 51% of the hash rate, as long as their intentions are good. So if for instance, if all the people that love Vertcoin have a lot of hash rate, and they have 75% of the network using P2 pool, there's nothing wrong with that, really. P2 pool P2 pool has an added layer of decentralization. So even if you wanted to, you could not point that 75% to a rogue. You couldn't 51% attack the network with P2 pool. That's not possible.
Exactly. And the one thing that I would strongly advocate for everybody who's watching this is, if you are mine to P2 pool, because that does help with decentralization. And at the end of the day, that right there is our, that is our, our goal and our mission as a group is to promote decentralization. Now, NiceHash, the first pool in their drop down is Coinitron. So we have been monitoring Coinitron's, the amount of hash power they have on the network. So we try, and we know the owner of Coinitron. We have a relationship with them. So we work with him just to try and promote decentralization, even on his own pool. But NiceHash is going to do what NiceHash does. There's no incentive for them to stop or change anything, because right now what they're doing works. It's making them a lot of money. It's enabling ease of use for people who want to do mining but they don't have any technical aspect to mining. It's a really a one click, and it just dodges from algorithm to algorithm based upon profitability. The big thing here is we need to bolster the non-nice hash rate on our network to these other pools. That way we can try to or stave off any sort of 51% attack, and that's also assuming somebody's going to be malicious to our network. I'd imagine that most of the malicious activity is going to be targeting the top 10 coins, but this is still something that we have to take into consideration. But from a development standpoint, there's not a lot that we can do other than promoting other pools, right?
No, so there isn't a clear-cut way of preventing 51% attacks, because we have seen in the past that even Bitcoin and also Litecoin had pools that were in control of more than half of the network. We've seen that on the numerous occasions, and I would guess that if there's a clear-cut way to prevent malicious activity, that they would have thought of it back then as well, because the fact that it can reverse transactions is kind of a big deal when you're trying to be the only thing a blockchain really guarantees is eventual consistency. And what we became accustomed to is that the eventual consistency is like 2 or 3 confirmations on Bitcoin and maybe 6 or 7 confirmations on Vertcoin, or now I think it's up to 20 on some exchanges, because they see this risk of transaction reversal using these attack methods. So it will still eventually be consistent. So after an hour of attack, then in the end it will still be consistent, but the damage to the exchange will already have been done. And so what I think with these 51% attacks, the parties at risk are mainly the exchange. I don't believe that there will be somebody that does a malicious move with a 51% attack, like attacking an exchange and reversing that transaction by publishing empty blocks, because in the end the chain will continue at some point. It's you cannot have a 51% attack last forever. At some point you're going to run out of money, in the sense that the number of Vertcoins that you're mining with your attack is less than what it costs to attack it.
Yeah, so you're essentially going to lose money.
Itself is not profitable.
Yeah, so you'll lose money if you do a 51% attack on Vertcoin, at least. And the only way to sustain that 51% attack and essentially take over the network is you have to have that hash power on hand all the time, right?
Yeah. So if you rent the hash power, then at some point you're going to be outspent, or you're not able to keep up the attack. Now, if you attack an exchange, then obviously the damage is already done. So, what you saw with the attack on Bitcoin Gold, they made 80 million. Well, you can run a lot of nice hash for 80 million, but I don't think that they continued their attack. So Bitcoin Gold, it returns to function as it did before. So it doesn't bring down the network per se, but it makes the reliability of the network less, because people will think, hey, if this is possible, then I'm going to wait like an hour or an hour and a half worth of blocks before I credit your exchange account when you send money to me. And that's what's happening to, I think, Bittrex and I think Vertpig also. They increased the number of confirmations just to sort of mitigate against that attack. And maybe they'll continue finding new ways of protecting themselves against these kind of attacks, because in the end the exchanges are the ones that are going to lose money. I don't think, if you have coins and you have them in your wallet, there's no way of a 51% attack to get that money from your wallet somewhere else. I mean, that's it. The private keys are still under your control. So even a 51% attacker cannot include invalid transactions or cannot spend your coins. It's not possible. All they can do is the transactions that already happened are going to be orphaned. So it will be as if they never existed.
So that's something good to speak on, because a lot of people may not understand that a 51% attack is only going to affect current transactions that are happening on that network while the attack is happening. And really, it doesn't, even if you send your own coin, say to an exchange, it's not necessarily going to affect your coin, right? It's only going to be benefiting the person who's doing the attack.
Well, not entirely. So,
okay.
So from the point that the attack starts, any transaction that you send that is not also included in the malicious chain. So if you are doing a 51% attack and you want to, make it look like it's just orphaning of some blocks by accident, you can include whatever transaction is there on the main chain in your malicious chain as well, except for the one that you send to the exchange. So everything will look the same. Only your transaction to the exchange suddenly disappeared when you publish your private blocks, the blocks that you did not.
Okay.
So,
but an attacker can also mine empty blocks. He can do whatever he wants. So he's mining a private chain. He doesn't publish it, but he outpaces the main chain. So at the time he publishes it, his chain becomes the new chain. So whatever happened on that main chain between the start of the attack and the time that he publishes his blocks can be affected or will be affected, most likely. So if you received coins during the attack, then the new chain will not contain that transaction. So the coins will be back in the wallet of whoever sent it.
Okay.
So that's why you would increase the number of confirmations before you accept the transaction. So what you also saw in the past when there were 51% attacks is that the developers of the coin said, okay, look, this is happening. There's 51% attack going on. We detected it. So make sure that you wait like 30, 60, 100 confirmations just to be sure that the money is there, and don't rely on the old safety that we had of like six confirmations or less. When it's going on, but it's difficult to see when it's going on. That's the other thing, because people are mining it to themselves, so they're not publishing any.
That's something I was going to ask is there some sort of technical way to spot a 51% attack and basically alert everybody who has a wallet or what have you through the wallet itself that this is happening, increase your confirmations? I guess since it's happening off chain, there's no way to really verify that until they go to publish the private packet or the private blocks, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think Ben wants to say something.
Well, no, I was just no, because this is there's something that I think maybe needs to be a little cleared up, right? So before we get into detecting a 51% attack, because obviously that is very difficult to detect from a development standpoint, but so there is for longer chains, and we discussed this a little bit before, Gert, but for longer chains, right? The idea that, as the attack is starting to happen, right, there was a proposed solution that I was looking into. I don't know how viable it is, so you can speak to that. You're much more technical. So the idea is that as the attack is starting, right, you're gonna in the code you can say ignore longer chain, orphaning the current best chain if the sum of like the priority of transactions included in the new chain is much less than the sum, which are the priorities of the transactions of the current best chain. So, because when you start the attack, right, again, ignoring the fact that you're not detected, that let's assume you detected instantly, right? There is that, they still have the hash power, yes, but they're still gonna have to confirm the blocks that they're doing on their chain if the chain is a longer chain, let's say Bitcoins, right? They would need to do a huge, like, they would need to be on the what's it called, the attack for such a long time before they can really start reversing transactions, because it's a much longer chain. They need, before they start including like the older, transactions while they're attacking, they're going to need to sustain a long time to be able to actually start making it their main chain. Does that make sense?
Well, a little bit. So what you were saying is that if, because there's always a chance that a new chain gets published that orphans one or more blocks from the main chain, or because it becomes the new main chain. It's the chain with the most work. So what you were saying, or what the article is proposing, is that if the difference between the new chain and the, at that point, main chain is too big, so if there are so many transactions missing all of a sudden, then ignore it. So say, this is not the new main chain. We'll continue using the old main chain. I mean, it's something that you could investigate, but as I said, if you make new rules, then there's always ways to go around them. So in this case, if you say, okay, if there are so many transactions missing from the new chain, then maybe ignore it. Then if you're attacking, you could say, okay, I'm just going to include all the transactions that are there in the main chain while I'm doing the attack. And at the end, when I'm publishing, then the difference is only one transaction. It's a very expensive transaction. That's the one that's going to make me a lot of money, but it's only one transaction. So there's no reason to orphan out the whole chain. And in like number of blocks, that's also difficult, because it happens sometimes that, there's a couple of blocks that are getting orphaned. It's just the rule of proof of work, and that's like proven stability over the last 10 years already with Bitcoin, or maybe 9 years. But the most work always wins. So if and it's interesting, because I was thinking earlier that, okay, Vertcoin has the difficulty adjustment at one block, right? So it adjusts the difficulty every block. So if you add a lot of hash rate to the network, then wouldn't it be difficult for an attacker to outpace the main chain? Because his private chain will most likely very soon be just as difficult as the main chain, right? Even if you pour in 60 or 70% of the total network capacity on your private chain, then it will still output blocks in 2.5 minutes. That's what the algorithm of adjusting the difficulty is designed for. Whereas for Litecoin and for Bitcoin, if you start your attack right after the difficulty has been adjusted, then the difficulty will be equal. So if you pour in twice the amount of hash rate, the blocks will emerge twice as fast. But the decider of who is the main chain is not the amount of blocks, but it's the amount of work. So if somebody is putting like 2 terahash of Lyra 2 on a private chain, then even with half the number of blocks, he will have performed more work, and therefore it would be the winning chain, which seems a little weird, but that's how it's supposed to work. So if you put in more work into a particular chain, the cumulative amount of work that was done to find blocks is the decider of who wins.
So right there, we have more of a reason why Vertcoin would be a better algorithm, per se, to prevent these 51% attacks than Litecoin and Bitcoin, just because of how it handles the difficulty, right?
Well, that was what I thought. So when I was going over this in my head, I thought, well, we have that, we adjust the difficulty every block. So it will be difficult to outpace the main chain in number of blocks. But that's not what determines a successful 51% attack. It's not the number of blocks that I mine. It's the amount of work I put in. So even if we adjust every block, the attacker will still have put in more work and therefore win. So that's what got me a little bit confused. What does help in the difficulty adjustment happening every block is that if a lot of hash rate, and we've seen this before, like a lot of hash rate jumps on because suddenly Vertcoin is more profitable, then instead of emerging blocks very quickly, and then when they leave, we have to wait 10 minutes or even an hour for blocks, the things that we've seen in Bitcoin Cash, when Bitcoin people jump to Bitcoin Cash and then back. So we saw, that 2016 blocks is the adjustment period of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash at that time, at least. I'm not sure if it's still that way. So you saw that as soon as the difficulty dropped, and a lot of hash rate jumped on to mine blocks very quickly, and then they jumped off, and then you had to wait a couple hours for one block. We don't have that problem, so people can jump on and off mining Vertcoin without. It takes a little time to adjust the hash rate, right, or adjust the difficulty. So it's not exactly the next block. There's instances where blocks are found like a minute apart, and then it takes 50 minutes even, or 20 minutes. But on average, it's 2.5 still. And I think that's one of the benefits for a small chain like Vertcoin, because we're still a small chain. We're not affected by large amounts of hash rate jumping on and off. So that's where the difficulty adjustment is a benefit. But for 51% attacks, I don't think it adds that much of protection, to be honest.
Okay, so one last thing that I wanted to touch on for the 51% attack here is I did want to, let me go over here, we'll show the web page that we have here. So one of the things that caught my eye when looking at that website is the solutions that they have to the 51% attack, and that is proof of stake, coins built on top of other networks, ERC20, and interchain linking. So I wanted to get your thoughts, and Ben, your thoughts as well, on these three solutions. Are they viable, and is this something that Vertcoin should work towards, or should we stay right where we're at with the proven methods of proof of work?
Ben, you want to go ahead?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, proof of stake, something that's, still highly experimental, right? It's not, Ethereum hasn't moved towards it yet. And one of the big thing is that, it's very permissioned, right? So a lot of the things that happens, right, and we've discussed this multiple times before, is that in the end, when you have something of a proof of stake, the one with the highest amount of stake or highest amount of coins is going to end up winning out like most of the rewards, right? Even if you do a a staking pool, like I imagine what Ethereum is going to do and stuff like that, you would still have the problem of which all the rewards will still be sequestered towards the top. At that point, is it really decentralized? Yes, the benefit is that it doesn't use electricity, which is a lot of what people are very afraid of. But the point being is that this electricity that's being used is to keep the integrity of the network. It could just take a bunch of people who own like most of the the staking coins to just be like, well, that's it. We're going to continue taking the rewards and everybody gets nothing. So, and then there's obviously the point that is not really addressed. That I don't know how like far they're into it, but how are they going to address something called the nothing at stake attack? What incentive do I have to put something up for its stake, right? So that is for something that I think on proof of stake not really a viable solution unless they fix all the holes in it. Right now, we've seen proof of work, aside from maybe the 51% attack, has been the most secure and reliable way to achieve consensus on a chain. What do you think, Gert?
I think in your last statement you said proof of stake where you meant proof of work.
So yes, sorry.
But other than that, no.
Yes.
I think, on proof of stake, I agree that it's hard to make a proof of stake system as permissionless and inclusive as proof of work. If you look at, I think the entry to staking Ethereum is like 1,000 ether or ish.
Yeah, something like that.
So that's like a crazy amount. The barrier to entry of mining Vertcoin is like a secondhand GTX 960, which is, I don't know, $100, $200, something like that.
Much more reasonable.
It comes with the computer.
And most people can mine Vertcoin. They don't even know it. The only thing that they have to do is, switch it on and burn a little electricity. And about the electricity, I always find it a bit weak argument against proof of work, in the sense that things use electricity. That's the case. You can, you can heat your house with electricity, but instead we burn gas. The fact that you use energy is not a problem. The problem is where the energy comes from, but that's a whole other debate that has nothing to do with cryptocurrency in general. But I think if the electricity you use comes from natural sources like wind or solar or hydrogen or hydropower plants, there's not a big deal about using electricity. It's just don't, burn coal or other stuff and use that, which is what they mainly do in big Chinese mining farms. So I can understand the resentment towards using large amounts of energy to mine, but nobody really knows how much energy all the banks use.
Right. So I was going to bring that up.
And
or how much energy someone driving a Tesla uses, or charging a Tesla, or any of these huge data centers. Nobody's questioning Google. How much power are you using? Is it really viable what you're doing? And I think it's a weak argument, and it's maybe an argument that's had by people who live in areas that have really expensive power. Because it makes it not profitable for them to mine. But the two other things was ERC20 tokens and then interchain linking. So I'm not sure what interchain linking is. I haven't done any research on it, but if either of you can talk to those two, and if that's a viable option, then we can move on to the Layer 2 workshop.
Yeah, well, I think, ERC20 token, we can cover that pretty quickly, right? VTC is not going to be an ERC20 token. And that's it. Okay. Which doesn't mean that ERC20 tokens have no utility. It's just, it's not like, I don't see an ERC20 token as a viable alternative for us. And also in the interchain linking, I think, a way of doing interchain linking is, as far as I understand, is merge mining.
Yeah.
So with merge mining, you take merge mining is not really linking interchain. It's more while you're mining, you include the Merkle root of the transactions of the child chain, so to say. So I think you can mine Litecoin and Dogecoin together. So the idea is that you craft a block for Dogecoin, you craft a block for Litecoin. You include the Merkle root of all the transaction in Dogecoin into your header, into your mining header. So you use it as part of the nonce that you're trying to figure out. And as soon as you find the right one that also matches the difficulty for Litecoin, then you get both the block rewards and you mine both the blocks at the same time. It's not really interchain linking. So what you can do with interchain linking, I think, is you timestamp the data from your chain and you include it in either a transaction or you include it in a master chain. So you take a more protected chain like Bitcoin and you get data onto that chain that resembles some of the data on your chain. So for instance, what you could do is, I've worked on this in sort of a prototype, not for Vertcoin, but for some other project I was working on, is you take the data from the child chain and you Merkleize it into one hash, and you just include that hash in a transaction that gets included on the Bitcoin chain. And in order for people to successfully attack your chain, they would also, I mean, that transaction is not going anywhere. So they also have to attack the main chain that you included it in, because that hash will not, it will not match the data on the child chain anymore if you attack it. So I think that's the principle of interchain linking. So you take another chain that's better protected, and then you sort of peg your blockchain to it by periodically timestamping data onto it. And I think there's a solution for that. I also saw somebody proposing it to use it for Vertcoin, but I haven't looked into it in that much detail that I can really say that it's a viable option. I think you have to pay for it also. It's like a paid solution.
Well, so with interchain linking, right? I mean, with some of the research that I've done, it's like, so I think Polkadot is one of those like examples. I think also people like to quote Icon trying to do something similar, but I know more about Polkadot than Icon. Polkadot, the idea is that, you know, they have like a quote unquote relay chain. It's supposed to be able to coordinate consensus and transactions between separate chains. So it kind of takes like, you know, merge mining to like another level, if you want to think about it that way, right? So, and then they have another component called bridges, which like bridges or like links two chains together. And I think Arc is also doing something similar to that in that case. To the point of it being safer, I mean, you pretty much, or like, you know, a better solution, it's still very experimental, and you pretty much, you know, explain that, like, you know, there are a lot of holes in that as well. It needs to be researched further.
Yeah, so while those options are proposed on this site, I don't think they're necessarily viable options for any proof of work coin at this point, when what they're doing is reliable. And all of the 51% attacks we've seen here lately have not been because of hash rate, it's been because of exploits of the code, right?
I don't think was the Bitcoin. I know that the Verge attack was indeed related to bugs in the difficulty adjustment
and the
code. So they were able to backdate blocks or forward date blocks. I don't know, something like that.
Yep.
So it was a code failure. Same thing for Mona, I think. So they use variation, the dark gravity well, or something like that. So but I'm not sure about Bitcoin Gold. So I thought Bitcoin Gold was an actual hash rate attack, but I don't know. Maybe I didn't study up enough.
I know Bitcoin Gold, so they use Equihash. So if then that would have been, well, I guess Bitcoin Private actually has less of a cost associated with actually taking over 51% of the of their hash rate using Equihash than Bitcoin Gold. But I'd have to look back and double check on. I know the most recent ones were bug related as far as 51% attacks go, and weren't necessarily hash rate. But the fact that this website's been up over a week, no one has used it to maliciously attack a proof of work coin yet on here, is a little encouraging, because I was worried that all this would do is kind of promote bad actors to be like, oh, okay, well, here's the dollar value for me to be a jerk and take over the blockchain for a short period of time. Let me go and do it. But we haven't seen that yet. But I think this.
Oh yeah. So no, I was just saying, like, you know, Gert mentioned that the incentives to be able to do something like that for like a smaller chain is very low. I mean, you know, you'd really want to attack, you know, the top 10 proof of work ones, right? You really just want to attack those, because, you know, you attack something like they have a bunch of, like, you know, coins, like whatever. There was one that was like $200 to just, like, you know, attack it, and it's like, well, how much are you really going to get out of that, you know, for an hour, right? You spend $200, are you really going to get that much in return?
Exactly. So let's move on to, we're going to knock out a few more topics here before we wrap up this talk. We're not going to go nearly as long as we did last time, but we did want to highlight, let me go over here. So we're going to highlight the Layer 2 workshop that Gert's going to be going to. So Gert, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about what's going on with that, and this is the end of this month, right? Towards the end of June, beginning of July.
Yeah. So we did the Layer 2 conference in Boston. I think it was 2 weeks ago. during the last Vertcoin Talk. What was interesting there is there's really an enthusiastic community working on a layer 2 scaling solutions, because essentially what we've learned in the past year is that we already knew that, but blockchains in essence don't scale. So the way to achieve a scale for everybody in the world to use something like a cryptocurrency is to build solutions on top of the blockchain that makes it possible to use it without actually using the chain. So what layer 2 does is, I heard people comparing it to a blockchain transaction is sort of going to court. And so if you need somebody to judge whatever you're doing is fair, then you need the blockchain, but you don't need the blockchain to pay for coffee. So if you have a solution like layer 2, like the Lightning Network is a layer 2 solution, only in case of dispute will you go to the court, go to the blockchain. So as long as everybody is in good faith, and most of it is still enforced using blockchain technology, just it's on a different layer. And what we presented during the layer 2 conference from MIT is the discrete log contracts. And you guys covered that topic in the last Vertcoin Talk already. And I thought it would be good to sort of explain a little bit about what they are, and then invite you, whoever's in Berlin or near Berlin at the end of June, to come visit this off-the-chain workshop, because I think off-the-chain is really where innovation is happening right now. I mean, yeah, there's also a lot going on, like in Bitcoin, and the on-chain scaling is still being worked on. They're still trying to, push the boundaries of how to get more transactions into that single block. But off the chain, there's a lot of interesting things going on off the chain, and the discrete log contracts is one of them. So it's sort of similar to Lightning Network transactions, where you fund a multi-sig output and then spend from that output, and instead of publishing, you exchange that transaction back and forth all the time, where you say, okay, there's this wallet, so to say, under our both control. There's 10 coins in it. You get 1, I get 9. As soon as I pay you 1, you get 2, I get 8. And we keep agreeing on the new state, and we reveal the old state. So by revealing the old state, if you decide to publish the old state, I can take all your coins. That's how Lightning Network sort of enforces you to play fair. What discrete log contracts do is, at the start of the contract, you exchange all the possible states. So in case of you betting on the weather, you sign 3 transactions, or you sign 3 transactions. So we're betting each other that I'm saying it's going to rain, you say it's going to be sunny, and we sign 3 transactions. If it rains, I get all the money. If it's sunny, you get all the money. And if it's cloudy, we split the pot. And we sign all of them, and there's a third party, a oracle, that publishes an external value that we use to claim the money. And there's a lot more to talk about. So there's the talk that we published on YouTube. I think I shared it on Twitter and LinkedIn, probably. So there's a little bit more in-depth explanation about what it is, also technically how it works. And there's also a demo. So the nice thing is that the discrete log contract functionality is built into Lit. And the Vertcoin community is very aware of Lit because it's part of a lot of our plans. And the nice thing is that because it is part of Lit, it will not only work on Bitcoin, it will also work on Vertcoin. So you could form contracts between 2 peers using some external value, for instance, the value of a US dollar measured in Vertcoin Satoshi, which means that you can sort of achieve a hedge against the volatility of Vertcoin or Bitcoin, but it works on any Bitcoin compatible chain that is part of Lit. And this opens up a lot of interesting possibilities. And the problem is that it's sort of been internal to MIT. There were a couple of talks about it, but what we're really trying to do in the next few weeks to months is to sort of push out documentation, code samples for people to actually start leveraging this technology and trying to come up with viable use cases, because you can think of a ton of them, but it's not up to MIT to build all these things. The paper was published in 2017, so it's already out there for quite a while, and I think it would help to get the community started to understand this technology and sort of start working with it. Maybe even people from the Vertcoin community. I mean, it's just a fun thing to play with. I think if you look at the Lightning channel that we have in the Discord, there's already people playing with Lit and using testnet Vertcoins. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you want to spark. You want to get people to install it, try to use it, and then usually it doesn't work, and then we can figure out why and we can improve it. So the more people get in touch with this kind of technology, the better. I find it really interesting, really exciting stuff, and I hope more of that is coming.
Yeah, I think with the layer 2 solutions like Lit or Lightning Network, the people who are developing the network, the layer 2 solution, are building the foundation that allows projects like Vertcoin to put the rest of the house together to really have something for people to come in and see. You got to have that foundation set first, and then we can build on top of that. And I think that's kind of our goals here at Vertcoin, is to continue to build solutions on top of that off the chain system. And like Gert had talked about, in our Discord, we have a bunch of channels that break down to different categories that we're working on. One of those is the Lightning channel. So if you want to get involved with Lightning, if you want to get your hands on it, if you want to test it, if you want to experiment, if you like breaking stuff, we want you to break it so we can figure it out and fix it before we actually start pushing this out to retailers and having that point of sale solution. Be a part of that solution with us. So we invite you to come into our Discord and chat with our developers, the marketing team, any person in the community. We're very receptive to having new people come in with regards to Lightning. So if you're in Germany, if you're near Germany during June 30th or July 1st through that whole weekend, make sure to stop over at the Master Workshop for the Off the Chain and say hi to Gert, because he's going to be there presenting. I think I was looking at the schedule. You're actually going to be talking 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. on June the 30th, right?
Yeah, it looks like I'm the opening act.
Very nice.
Yeah, so guys, get in there. If you're near there, get in and see Gert's talk. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it and publishing it here on all of our social channels and stuff. But get in there and say hi. So right.
Before you continue, before you continue, just wanted to plug one more thing in, because it makes sense, because what Gert said, and what you said, if you like breaking things, you like playing around with things, right? You can help me build up Vertcoin Academy, because we want to be able to promote good education of what to do, because as Gert said, MIT can't do everything. And we want to be able to provide the framework such that people can break things, create things. And if you have created something or have like a guide for something, it'd be wonderful for you to contribute to the current Vertcoin documentation. And then when I'm done developing Vertcoin Academy and I'm going to continue building upon it, we're going to continue develop, going for that. I can do a lot of the stuff myself, but it's better if you have all the community members, everyone who's involved in open source, to be able to create something and then, put it out there for people to see. So definitely, contact me, B17Z or Bits, whatever you want to call me, on Discord to get involved.
Awesome. Yeah, I know the Vertcoin Academy is something that is going to be huge in the coming months. So if you guys want to contribute that, please reach out to Ben on Discord, or just go into the general channel and ask about Vertcoin Academy. Everybody will point you right to where you need to go in order to help contribute. The last thing, well, not the last thing, but the next last thing we're going to talk about is Vert Base. So I know, at least here for me in the United States, I am fiending for Vert Base to get launched because I have a bunch of cash that I want to convert into Vertcoin. But they did have their business meeting with their bank in New York City. They did post something on our Reddit here. You guys can see it, where they were talking about a banking hiccup that they had that is going to push back the actual launch of the U.S. timeline, and I believe even the Australian timeline, because that's still in the work as well. But it's pushing that back maybe about 3 months. It may come a little bit sooner, but it's not on Vertbase as far as like a developmental standpoint. They have to get paperwork and red tape squared away with the bank in order to be able to accept the banking transactions to then buy the Vertcoin and such. So that did get delayed. I know it was supposed to launch yesterday, but unfortunately that was a curveball that they threw into their meeting whenever they were up there. So they didn't know about it whenever they first got up there. So it was kind of a little curveball, but they're going to work through it. They've already submitted all the paperwork, and that stuff should be able to come through pretty soon. I know we did have some people ask, because Bittrex is offering kind of a USD pairing, is that going to kill Vertbase? And I would say no, not at all, because Vertbase is a completely different entity, but it's also going to offer some other products and other sort of API solutions and stuff like that. So Vertbase is still, going down the road it's been going now for almost 6 months to bring you a USD, now Australian dollar, and Vertcoin pairing. So continue to look for that. I know I'm excited for it. I know Gert's really happy that Vertpig is up and running to get that Euro and Vertcoin pairing. So if you guys have Euro as your currency and you want some Vertcoin, head over to vertpig.com and you can exchange those right away. For us who have US dollars, we got to wait a little bit longer before we can get into that and start making that direct transaction with USD to Vertcoin.
It works great, man. The euro to Vertcoin exchange is just, I transferred my euro to Vertpig. It was credited like 2 to 3 hours later, and I could buy Vertcoins. It was great.
That's awesome.
I mean, previously, I had to go to one exchange, buy Bitcoin, and send it to Bittrex, and then exchange it, and that's so crazy. This is much better. It saves a lot of time, and it works great. Great.
I mean, one thing to take into note, guys, is that Vertpig and Vertbase is not done by the core team. So these are community members that took the initiative. They saw a market or a need in the community, and they took their skill and their talents, and they built out these two different exchanges that are kind of working in unison to cover half of, or a little bit over half of the earth as far as trading pairs and such. So if you're in the community, you're really passionate about Vertcoin, don't think that you can't contribute. These are prime examples as to what you can do with your talents to be able to facilitate other individuals to get and to operate inside of the Vertcoin ecosystem. So yeah, like Gert was saying, if you have euros, Vertpig is your exchange. If you have USD, we got to wait just a little bit longer for Vertbase to get up and rolling. So just to keep this, we got 5 minutes left. We're going to keep this to an hour today. You guys may have seen it on our social sites, but we have a little promotion that's going. We have partnered with a company called Pex Peppers. They have created a Vertcoin hot sauce for us in the past a little while ago, but now they have released a new version of the Vertcoin Verde sauce. You can now pre-order that. We are doing a pre-order, that way we can cover all of the expenses with producing the sauces, and it's not actually going to cost anything from the team here. It's just pure marketing and being able to get a hot sauce, share it with your friends, and they're going to be like, what's with Vertcoin. It's an easy talking point that over tacos you can start talking about cryptocurrency using this hot sauce. So there's a link down in the description if you want to pre-order the sauce. We just wanted to pass this around and just get that name recognition out even further than it already is.
Cool. Can we order it from Europe as well?
I believe so. Let me see. I believe you can order this internationally. I know you can order it internationally, but it does get relatively expensive with the VAT taxes and then shipping. But yeah, go to the website. I know right now they got it on sale right now for a bottle is $8 US.
Okay.
But I don't know what the shipping would be for you over there in the Netherlands.
Okay, should we just buy a whole batch, send it to one address, and then distribute it from here?
Yeah, we just need an EU distribution hub over there for.
I can do that.
I tell you what, I know the guy who owns that company. He's in our Discord a lot, so we can see what he can do.
I'll have a chat with him. See if I can do something.
That'll work. So we have a few questions here inside of our YouTube channel. So if you have any questions, we got 3 minutes real quick to run through these real quick. If your question does not get answered, come into our Discord and ask questions of our developers or anybody, and we'll get that stuff answered. One of the questions we have here.
I was going to actually answer this one.
Oh, go ahead.
Vertcoin scale to the masses if it's ASIC resistant. I'm not entirely sure what kind of question that is, but it doesn't have to do with ASIC resistance to be able to scale with the masses. That is has nothing to do with that. With the be able to scale, you look at something like Lit, the Lightning, our version of the Lightning network, to be able to scale to the masses. Being ASIC resistant does not have any sort of resultancy on being able to scale. So just if you want to think or talk about scaling, then come to the Vertcoin Discord channel and let's talk Lightning.
Yeah, I think ASICs, that just increases the difficulty of the hash power now, and it also can centralize, the workers on the proof of work, but it doesn't affect scaling. One of the other questions: does VTC have an algorithm laying around for backup in case an ASIC miner is released for layer 2?
I think there's two options that we have. A short-term, easy to implement would be tweaking the Lyra 2 RE to a Lyra 2 RE v3. So kind of tweaking the parameters of the algorithm and then publishing that. But the problem is that if you already have a Lyra 2 RE v2 ASIC, then you would probably already be close to that. As soon as we release it, then you start developing it, and you have to keep doing that continuously. There's also some other options that we can investigate, but what people have to realize is that because we're so decentralized, it's not as easy for us to hard fork something into a new algorithm. So if you are like Bitcoin, or you have like a small group of people in charge of a large number of the hash rate, then it's easy to get something accepted. You need to ask a few big players if they accept the change, and then you can accept the change. And in our case, we have a lot of people running Vertcoin nodes, and if they don't upgrade, then it's no hard fork. Then the old algorithm just stays in place and nothing happens, and you get a fork that lasts. So you get two Vertcoins in the end.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a technical difficulty of hard forking. It's making sure that the community is all on board. And luckily with us, we have that social contract from the get-go. When you first learn about Vertcoin, you understand we've done this in the past. We will do it again. We will do whatever it takes in order to make sure that we can stay decentralized and we don't have those ASICs and stuff like that on the network. So if it's a new algorithm that fixes that, or if it's a tweak here or there, it is difficult to coordinate all that. It does take time, but our community is ready. I think they're more than amped to be able to upgrade their software to the newest and latest version to make sure to shun that ASIC that has been built on the previous algorithm. I don't think that's too much of a problem for our community.
Well, I mean, you also have to account for the fact that exchanges need to upgrade, and everybody, accepting payments needs to upgrade. So you need to coordinate such a fork more than you would do, because what you've seen in the past few weeks is that Poloniex wasn't accepting any Vertcoin.
People were losing
their
their mind
Vertcoin
over
wallet was disabled, because they were just now upgrading to our 0.13 version, which was already out for like 2 months. So, consider the fact that you would fork to a different algorithm. So you make a new version of Vertcoin and you say it's now using some other hashing algorithm, and they decide to upgrade 2 months later. Then you have chaos. So you have to coordinate. So it's not something that you can do over the weekend, right? So we have to do careful planning. We have to think about what would be the next algorithm. How can we make sure that it's resistant to ASICs longer than just a few months? Plan it with all the actors in the ecosystem. Say, okay, this is what's going to happen. Prepare for it, and we set a date in the future, like 6 months from now or 9 months from now. And you program the fork already into the software so that if we reach a certain block height, then we switch from one algorithm to the other. And we have to make sure that before that block is mined, everybody is upgraded. And then it can go off without a hitch, like it did twice in the past. So when we moved from script to Lyra 2RE and from Lyra 2RE to V2, everything sort of went out without a hitch. But, at that time, you need to make sure that the majority hash follows you. So, that's something that we need to coordinate. So it's not something we can do overnight. And it's also not something that you can try. So you have to be sure that you make the right pick and you do it well, and then, everything can work. But if you don't carefully plan it and you choose the flavor of the month, or, there's a lot of new ideas flowing into this space that people already think, hey, this is a good idea. We need to vet it very properly and then, decide what is the right way for us to go.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, with that, just to keep in mind with time, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Vertcoin Talk. We want to thank everybody for joining. Ben, Gert, thank you very much for joining us here on today's Vertcoin Talk. Once again, if your question did not get answered, please jump into our Discord. We're always in there, and ask us a question there. But with that, I'm Kanan, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you guys in the next one.